and we're starting right away with explosive material. The security service of Ukraine has blown up the supports of the Kerch Bridge. Their agents planted explosives on those very supports, and around 5 in the morning activated the first explosive device. The underwater supports of the pillars have been severely damaged at the seabed level. 1,100 kilograms of explosives in TNT equivalent contributed to this. In fact, the bridge is in an emergency condition, the agency stated. Could Crimea be facing its own web? Exclusive details about what is happening in Crimea right now coming up in just a minute. But there is also troubling news from the front. Russian forces have advanced toward the Sumy region, occupying Konstantinovka. Other settlements are also under threat. All the details are in our report. Crimea was shaken by a series of explosions. The security service of Ukraine has struck the Crimean bridge for the third time. This time, special agents planted explosives on the bridge supports. The special operation was carried out underwater. As a result, the occupiers restricted traffic for several hours. The Ministry of Defense reported that 8 drones were destroyed overnight over Russian regions and temporarily annexed Crimea. Is Operation Web 2 really brewing in Crimea? At the very least, preparations for it are underway there. After the explosions at Russian airfields, planes and helicopters were massively scrambled from military airfields in Crimea. According to Ukrainian intelligence, the carriers of tactical nuclear weapons in Crimea could be Russian planes, helicopters, as well as submarines, ships and boats based there.
At present, there has been no recorded deployment of the occupier countries' nuclear weapons on the territory of occupied Crimea. However, it should be noted that even without nuclear potential, the territory of Crimea is essentially considered a continuous military base for the occupier country's army. Therefore, there are enough legitimate military targets to carry out operations of this nature.
Let us recall that on June 1, the security service of Ukraine conducted a historic special operation in Russia. Simultaneously, 4 military airfields in the rear of the aggressor country were struck, resulting in the loss of dozens of aircraft worth $7 billion. Meanwhile, Russia has published the so-called peace memorandum, which it handed over to Ukraine during the negotiations in Istanbul. It includes 3 sections with 2 options for ceasefire conditions and 31 points. The first option for a ceasefire is the complete withdrawal of the Ukrainian army from Russian territory, as well as from the entire territory of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions.
This refers to territorial concessions by Ukraine. Moreover, the Russian Federation is claiming even those areas of the Luhansk, Donetsk, Zaporizhia, and Kherson regions that are under the control of Ukraine's defense forces and which the Russian army is unable to control, meaning they cannot break through the defenses of Ukraine's forces. The Russian political leadership is clearly well aware that from a military standpoint, the objectives of occupying the territory of Donetsk region are unattainable.
The second option includes provisions prohibiting the redeployment of troops, halting mobilization and the supply of foreign military aid to Kyiv, as well as initiating demobilization.
Halting mobilization activities would effectively disrupt both the rotation of personnel and the replenishment of operational reserves for Ukraine's defense forces. The same situation applies to the cessation of military and military technical support from our strategic partners. That is, the Russian Federation fully understands that the ability to resume the logistical component of military technical support, if it is halted, could seriously impact the current situation directly on the front line.
In addition, the document stipulates Ukraine's neutrality, its refusal to join NATO, the holding of elections, international recognition of the Donetsk, Luhansk, Kherson, and Zaporizhia regions, as well as Crimea as Russian and other such nonsense.
The remaining points of the so-called memorandum from the Russian delegation on the demilitarization of Ukraine indicate that the proposals from the Ukrainian side are essentially being disregarded. Let me remind you, in the Ukrainian memorandum, the issues of demilitarization or reducing the size of the armed forces of Ukraine are specifically excluded from the negotiation process. A similar situation applies accordingly to the so-called neutral status of Ukraine.
Meanwhile, the situation in the north of the Sumy region continues to worsen. The analytical project Deep State has reported that Russian occupation forces have captured Konstantinovka. Several other settlements are also under threat.
At the moment, the main threat of further advancement by Russian troops in the Sumy region is their potential to establish direct control over the settlement of Yeno-Kiyivka. This settlement is the largest logistics hub for the armed forces of Ukraine. The Sumy-Yeno-Kiyivka-Suja highway, which is used for personnel rotation, delivery of ammunition, and evacuation of the wounded, including by units of the Ukrainian Defense Forces, concentrated in the Kursk and Belgorod regions, passes through this area.
Meanwhile, official Washington is warning that after Operation Web, Russia may launch new strikes against Ukraine's energy system. And now let's analyze the situation on the much-suffering Pokrovsk front. Let's be honest, this is yet another sacred target for Putin and his gang. Accordingly, the situation here is also extremely tense. Since the beginning of the day on the Pokrovsk front, the occupiers have made 42 attempts to dislodge our defenders from their positions in the areas of the settlements of Poltavka, Mirolyubivka, Malinivka, Yelizavetivka, Lisivka, Zvereve, Udachne, Kotlin, Novozergeyevka, Novoaleksandrivka, and towards Pokrovsk and Andrivka. The defense forces are holding back the pressure and have already repelled 38 enemy attacks. 3 kilometers from the front line, 4 villages have been almost completely evacuated and destroyed. This refers to the Mezhova community in the Dnipropetrovsk region on the border with Donetsk region. It has been loud here since the very beginning of the full-scale invasion. Now, explosions are heard continuously, which is why a mandatory evacuation of families with children was recently announced from 5 settlements and from Mezhova itself. At the same time, the number of local residents is only increasing. Why is that? TSN journalists Anastasia and Neverna will tell and show us.
Mezhova greets us with the sound of a siren, signaling yet another air raid alert. And the siren here hardly ever stops. The front line is just a few kilometers away. The sound of shelling is constant. And recently, another problem has emerged. FPV drones have started breaking through to the center of the community. Dozens of them fly over the houses every day. Just the other day, one of the drones destroyed a kindergarten. After the strike, only the walls remained of the recently renovated facility. Everything burned. Children's beds, books, toys.
There were no children present at the time of the strike. Classes are being held online, so we had no casualties or injuries. Cultural institutions, educational facilities have been destroyed. Objects in the social and cultural sphere are being targeted and destroyed. We've managed to restore some of them, but it's becoming more and more difficult. In some cases, it's simply dangerous to do so.
Locals have learned to move quickly through the streets, to listen carefully, and more recently, to watch the sky intently. I have a ringing in my ears.
My cheek twitches, it twitches. My cheek twitches, it's just nerves now. You can hear it both day and night. Novopavlivka is nearby, so of course we can hear everything here. We understand that we're next in line. We know that we're next.
It is precisely from neighboring Novopavlivka, which the enemy has been wiping out with daily cab strikes since last year, that a significant number of displaced people have come to Mezhova. There are about 10 kilometers between the villages, but even that distance is seen by people as relative safety.
No one really wants to go far from home.
Anastasia is one of those who stayed in Novopavlivka until the enemy destroyed her house. I don't know how many people are left there.
I don't know how many people are left there. On my street where I live, 3 homeowners have already been killed. There's no one left further down. There are only empty houses standing there.
Now, at 74 years old, she has become a displaced person. She came to process her documents, and her biggest fear is that she'll have to move even further away again. She just started to settle in here.
That's exactly what we're afraid of, because when we first arrived, everything was fine, but now they're shooting again, everything's exploding. I'm scared again, I'm shaking.
At the Administrative Services Center, they say that despite the proximity to the front line, there are already more than 6,000 displaced people in the community. Azarov also started.
Now FPV drones have also started reaching us, but people are still moving here, and even today we had citizens from the Novopavlivka community.
Margarita has been living in Mezhova since the summer of 2022. The whole family fled from Vuhledar, and now they're once again living out of suitcases. Together with her husband and paralyzed father, they're planning to move deeper into the Dnipropetrovsk region.
What are we supposed to wait for?
What should we expect? Wait until the house is destroyed and my father has to be pulled out, for example, from a burning building. It's terrifying because they're dropping things here.
But Vera still believes that everything will be alright. Her yard can be seen from afar. It's overflowing with flowers. That is, 24 hours a day, I'm busy with the flowers.
You see, I'm always tending to the flowers. Right now, I need to braid these daffodils. Look, the roses are starting to bloom.
The woman planted a vegetable garden and grows several varieties of roses. She says she's gotten used to the constant explosions.
Something is buzzing. I can't even tell what it is anymore. Maybe it's a door opening somewhere, or maybe it's just buzzing. Well, if it's flying, let it fly. What can you do? I'm not planning to go anywhere.
Mandatory evacuation of families with children has already been carried out in 4 settlements of the Mezhivska community. Just recently, evacuation was also announced in 5 more places, including the village of Mechova itself, because every day it's getting louder and more dangerous here.
Every voice matters. Join our community, support independent journalism and help us bring you the truth from Ukraine. Become a member of Ukraine Today. Join us now.
Russia's war against Ukraine is entering a nuclear phase. One possible scenario from the Kremlin is a nuclear strike on Kyiv or Odessa, counting on the West not responding in any way. These are the rather grim prospects, to put it mildly, that the Western press is predicting. As you can see, Russia's revenge for Webb and the strike on the Crimean bridge may not be limited to just Orykiv or the recent missile and drone attack. And by the way, even now, NATO is increasing the number of air defense systems in Europe 5-fold because of the potential Russian threat. Meanwhile, servicemen of the 225th Separate Assault Regiment of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, with support from adjacent units, captured a Russian army company strongpoint on the territory of Kerch region. You are about to see this footage right now.
Just yesterday, it was an important resistance hub. No, it's nothing but a crater. The 225th Separate Assault Regiment in the Kursk region cleared and captured a Russian army company strongpoint, which covered an important direction and was well prepared for all-around defense. After Ukraine's successful strikes on Russian aviation and the Crimean bridge, Russia didn't just react, it became enraged. For example, Medvedev is now talking about some kind of retribution.
To everyone who is worried and waiting for retribution, it's normal to worry. That's a natural human trait. Retribution is inevitable.
The possibility of a retaliatory response was also mentioned in the US, suggesting that Russia might strike Ukraine using ballistic missiles, including the Oreshnik.
I'm sure that such a situation is possible because this person has a disturbed mind. Actually, yes. But I can say with confidence that, first of all, we will know in advance whether this Oreshnik will be launched or not. Because, thank God, our partners, the British and the American, monitoring the entire territory of Russia around the clock with their satellites. We receive timely information about any missile launches that take place from the territory of the Russian Federation.
Although there is also the possibility that Russia will simply launch another swarm of drones at energy or civilian infrastructure, there is also the possibility of new waves of medium-range ballistic missile launches.
I think they will continue to use drones just as they have been. Why do they mostly use drones? Because their goal at the moment is to bleed our air defense system dry. Well, that's what they believe.
The Daily Mail also quotes a British colonel who claims that the war could enter a nuclear phase. After all, Putin knows that nuclear retaliation would force Ukraine to surrender.
He is not the only politician in the Russian Federation who I think would advise him that it's really not worth messing around with nuclear weapons, because the response would be severe and harsh, believe me. Neither Europe nor America will just stand by and watch. And in return, they would receive a very serious blow.
But who knows, maybe after Operation Webb and the Crimean bridge, something else awaits Russia.
Good things come in threes. First there was Webb, then the Crimean bridge. I can tell you with great confidence that we have one ace up our sleeve. We have our own little rocket that's more interesting than Oreshnik. I think we'll be testing it ourselves very soon. Given the situation that's unfolding on the part of the Russian Federation,
And despite the fact that since the beginning of this year, Russia has lost approximately 200,000 soldiers, Europe has also begun actively preparing for the arrival of the Russian world. The UK has announced a state of readiness for war.
This is something that concerns us. I can announce that we are planning to build at least 6 new ammunition factories in the UK. In this way, we will create more than 1,000 jobs. We will produce 1,000 new long-range guns in the UK to strengthen Europe's deterrence forces.
NATO has also called on its European members to increase the number of air defense systems 5-fold due to the threat of Russian aggression. But will Russia have the courage to take such a step?
I think they won't have enough strength and resources to do it. I understand that Europe realizes this as well. I understand that as of today, by the way, when Putin announced this renewed mobilization and these large-scale exercises on the territory of Belarus, actually after that, Europe began to take Putin's threats much more seriously. And preparations are underway on the territory of the European Union in Europe, with very serious measures being taken for defensive and preventive actions.
Also, according to updated information from Deep State, the occupiers have advanced in the Sumy region, capturing Andriivka and Vodolagi.